Call the Facilities Committee meeting for Wednesday, October 16th, 2024 to order. There's no public comment, is there?
Yes, sir.
Let me lead us in a word of prayer, please. Our dear Heavenly Father, we're so thankful for this day and thankful that this community was spared from the hurricanes. We ask that you would just be with those that were really hit hard and just comfort them and help the responders as they repair from their houses and everything else. Some people lost everything they have. Father, just thank you for the opportunity we have to represent the JWSC. Help us be wise and be good stewards. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
First item is approval section minutes from the September 18th, 2024 Facilities Committee meeting. Can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
All in favor? Motion carries 3-0. Second item is minutes from September 18th, 2024 Facilities Committee Executive Session.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second, all in favor? Motion carries 3-0. Next item is fiber optic sharing agreement. Mr. Burns.
Yes, sir. JWSC and Glynn County share a high-speed fiber optic data network to connect different facilities to a data center, and this speeds up the transfer of data between our systems and eliminates the need for both of us to have separate networks. There was a 10-year agreement signed in 2014 concerning the maintenance of this shared fiber optic network, and that agreement expires in November. This is critical for us, and Todd's group uses this extensively for the sharing of GIS data and things like that. It also helps with our sewer CCTV inspection videos. Those are housed on a server at Academy Creek, and having fiber optic to get that back here so we can view them at the office is very helpful. And it also shares between multiple locations at the county and JWSC. There are no guaranteed costs associated with this agreement, but if there's necessary repairs, we pay a portion of the repairs because of the strands that we have in there. There are 96 strands of fiber optic cable in the network. We utilize 4 of those strands, so we pay a very small percentage of the repairs when they come up. Or if there's anything that's ever just the 4 strands that we have that have to be repaired, we'd be responsible for 100% of the cost. The agreement that's been attached, we've got some red lines in there that's basically just some clerical information to reflect current contact information and then what our actual legal name is. But otherwise, there's no changes to the agreements from the previous 10 years. And so we would like to recommend renewing the agreement as presented for another 10-year period so that we can continue to utilize this fiber optic network.
Have a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'll move the Facilities Committee recommend the full commission renew the fiber optic sharing agreement with the Glynn County Board of Commissioners.
Second?
Who actually runs fiber?
The county does all the maintenance, and they may, I don't know if they terminate it or if they get somebody else to terminate it. They do all the maintenance for it, and they've done all the installations. We're just utilizing the fiber network.
So the contract is actually with the county
With-
and their contract.
That's correct. Well, no, we're just, this is an agreement between us and the county for us to basically piggyback on the county's agreement. The county has it running through, it goes up 341, and we have a connection at Academy. We've got connections here, and they have fiber optic through several parts of the county that we can utilize. And I think it goes all the way out to the EOC as well. They have fiber all the way out there, I'm pretty sure. So it's a large network that we take advantage of.
Historically, has there been many repairs?
Very limited. I may recall 1 or 2
Yeah.
in the whole time I've been here. So we're talking low dollar value.
Right,
but
I was going to say,
the
fiber
cost to
is-
run our own fiber optic network would far exceed
Oh.
the maintenance costs we're paying right now.
Okay, I'll second.
Motion second. Any other questions? Motion carries 3-0. Next item is dedication of easements and infrastructure. Mr. Klein.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, good afternoon. This is dedication item here. It is. Item number 1 is Sterling Industrial Park Water Main, Georgia State Route 99 easements. And the second item is Town Square Phase 1. I'll hit the first one first. The Sterling Industrial Park Water Main easements are easements we obtained from Seaboard Construction or their parent company to cross across their property. and that was to help facilitate the installation of the water main up on State Route 99. That was done some years ago. This is simply a little bit of a cleanup. Those easements actually was brought to our attention by Seaboard as they're checking their records that these easements were never actually executed, so we're here to do that now with those. It's just a few easements to go across their property. And the second item is Town Square Phase 1 dedication of infrastructure, and that is for the pipes and whatnot, water and sewer infrastructure there on within their development. Phase 1 is the one that butts up against Chapel Crossing Road, and I think we've got GIS pulled up here. This is the plant improvement one, or Seaboard Construction off State Route 99, just east of Sterling intersection. And as you can see, that water line jumps out of the State Route 99 right away onto their property, goes across their property, then comes back out. And that was to help us get around some existing utilities and also help speed along the installation process. Fun fact of note of this project, Seaboard Construction was also our contractor that installed the water line for that. And now let's take a look at Town Square, Chapel Crossing Road, over here just south of Fletsy.
Good shot.
Fletsy's easy to see because
Yeah.
it's the big blank spot, all right? So Town Square Phase 1 is what we're talking about here, and that's these residential units, and this will round out the easements and dedications for the Town Square development.
It is Phase 1, but they've already dedicated Phase 2 and 3, correct?
That's correct, yes.
So
Yes.
got their phasing numbers out of whack a little bit, but this will be the last of the
This phase
phases.
is right by the road, right?
This is
the
the-
townhouses
correct.
that are running along there.
That's correct, yes, sir. And I'm happy to answer any questions if there's anything in particular about these two items.
Have a motion?
I move that the Facilities Committee recommend the full commission approve and accept these projects with associated documentation.
I'll second the motion.
Motion second. Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Motion carries 3-0. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Go to the discussion section of the meeting. First item is lead service line inventory dashboard. Mr. Burrows?
Yes, sir. This is probably the most noteworthy thing that's happened in our industry this week is everybody's lead service line inventory is due tomorrow or today. Today. Ours was submitted earlier this week, so we're on schedule. But according to EPA regulations, we are required to identify the materials of service both on, this is only for water, both on our side and the customer side of the meter. And there are multiple categories, but essentially we'll talk about 3 of them today. There's categories known as lead, known, not lead, and unknown. There's also another category for galvanized requiring replacement. However, to our knowledge, we will have none of those in our system. The galvanized requiring replacement are any galvanized lines services that are downstream of lead mains. We have 0 lead mains in our system, so we don't have any galvanized requiring replacement. So essentially what we have is 2 classifications. There's a 3rd classification, which we don't have any identified at this point. We have known, not lead, and unknown. And the reason for that is, as you can see on this graph here, and this will be publicly available. I don't know if it's on the website yet, but it will be placed on the website. This graph, the things in light blue, and you can zoom in, and it doesn't look like a blob, but it kind of gives you a heat map. But the things in light blue are known, not lead, and those are typically poly or PVC services that have been installed over the years. And there's individual points for every billable address we have in the service system. And so this is out here off of Glencoe Parkway, Harry Driggers, all of that's relatively newer construction. Basically, anything built since 1990 we know is not lead because lead pipes were phased out in the plumbing code in 1988. So we have all these. In the light blue and the darker blue, when I zoom back out, these are ones that are listed as unknown. So the unknown requires us to do a few things following up to that, and we still have to go through and finish this inventory. We had started doing some of this inventory, trying to do some potholing and things like that, And the unfortunate reality is, with the amount of contractor line breaks that we've had over the past 2 years, we have been unable to sustain crews to do this. We spoke with our meter contractor, because we did touch every meter in the system about doing this work for us, and they told us they had no interest in performing this service for us at that time. So the dark blues that we have here are unknowns at this time, and we have a few things we're required to do. We are required to notify new customers of what their material of construction is when they come in and sign up with us. We won't necessarily tell you that it's PVC, but we'll tell you whether it's not lead or unknown. And we'll have to send out within the next 30 days, so theoretically maybe the first week in November or so, we'll send out letters to everybody. Every customer will get a letter identifying what their service is, either unknown or known not lead. And I say that because we have no knowledge of any lead service lines in our system, but we don't have records on what everything is. So until we can officially eliminate all of them, we cannot say they're not lead. But our water distribution crews, Derek and Alvin have been here. Derek's been here 20 years. Alvin's been here 16 or 17 years, something like that. They have never seen a lead service line in our system, but they obviously haven't laid their hands on 32,000 services. They probably laid their hands on most of them, but they haven't laid their hands on 32,000 services. We have a lot of galvanized lines. We have what are known as lead goosenecks, which are excluded from this if they're shorter than 24 inches. We have a lot of lead goosenecks shorter than 24 inches. And if we expose those, we are required to immediately change that gooseneck out. And so those will be done heavily with the galvanized project. That's how we're going to do those, because we're going to go in and run a new main and run the new services. Those goosenecks will come out at that time. Everybody will get a letter in the mail from us, and some people are going to get 2 letters. And the reason for that is if you have to send one to the customer and the owner of the property. And for some people that's the same, but they have different names. So one of them the owner may be an LLC, and the customer is Joe Smith. So not knowing all of those things, you may get 2 copies of the same letter. And the letter will essentially say, because of EPA or EPA Rule 40 CFR or whatever, we're required to identify your type of materials of service, and yours is listed as known not lead, or yours is listed as unknown at this time. We are required to continue to identify or replace 10% of the unknowns every year until they are eliminated. So we've got about 17,000 unknown services, so we got to get 1,700 of them done a year. They will be done in 2 ways. One of them will be a substantial amount of record keeping. We got to go to the map room down at Academy Creek for a lot of the old city records and go through those. And then we'll also be doing potholing with our water distribution crews. What we'll probably end up doing, we've got a couple of ongoing galvanized projects now. Once we finish those galvanized projects, the crews that are working on galvanized are going to be focused on this until we get through it, because we've got to eliminate 1,700 a year. The quicker we can get ahead, the better with that. And then they'll get a letter within 30 days of, we turned it in yesterday, so 30 days of yesterday we're required to send a letter in. And then every year we'll send another letter, and if your item is still listed as unknown. We're not required to send letters for the ones that are known not lead, but to avoid confusion of people not getting letters, we're going to send letters to everybody and let them know theirs is not lead, so they don't have any concern. What we didn't want to have happen was some people get a letter and their friend calling, hey, I got this letter from Joint Water and Sewer, did you get one? And then there'd be some cause for concern. We're going to send everybody the first batch of letters to let them know that theirs is not lead. What we'll also have to do is if there is if somebody has to be disconnected, or they choose to be disconnected for a move-in, move-out situation, if it is unknown, we can either, we'll have to dig down at that time to see what's going on. We have to do a flushing program if it's unknown. We'll provide that. We'll also have to provide a point of use filter and 6 months worth of cartridges for them when that happens. And that's required by the EPA regulations. So we're going to have to start handing out water filters. And I say this with all sincerity, that is a huge abundance of caution. We have multiple samples for lead and copper in our system, and we've never had problems with lead and copper. This is from the EPA requirements. We're required to hand these things out, and so we're going to follow the rules. If we have to remove a meter or remove the setter or anything like that, we're required to replace the service line at that time, or identify the service line to confirm it's not. So we'll have to dig down, and if it is a lead service, we'll have to replace at that time. We are required to offer, we can charge them for it, but we're required to offer to replace the customer side of the service as well. So our plan is to bid out and get guaranteed rates from plumbers to do that work so that we're not the ones responsible for running the service line from the meter to the customer's house. And so there's a guaranteed price for doing that. That would be, essentially that's twice the amount of work that we have to do. And we're going to have that charge will go to the customer at that time if they wish to do that. They're not required to replace their line. We're required to offer them that we're going to that we can make that done.
Can I ask you a question?
Go ahead.
So the service line from the meter to the house typically possibly could be lead.
Yes.
Not likely in this area. And how far would the lead go? Would it continue into the house or just?
The EPA rule stops at the entrance to the house.
Okay.
But
so
yes, you are correct. That is one of the questions that has repeatedly been asked.
Okay.
Is what happens for people that have leaded brass fixtures in their house, things like that. At this point, there's nothing in here that addresses that. So you can fix everything, and if somebody's got leaded brass fixtures or something like that, they could still have some concerns.
But we still would be, if we did identify lead, we would be fiscally responsible to replace it from the meter to the house.
Not at this time. We're required to offer to replace it, but they can be charged for it.
Okay, so it would be, and that's why you want to have a
Contractor to be the one that does
local,
that, yes, sir. And also to eliminate the need we have to get temporary construction easements over everybody's property for us to enter their property.
Right.
That becomes an administrative nightmare to get construction easements over,
Reduce our liability also?
Yes, it does. The liability would be the contractor.
On the contract, okay.
At that point.
Andrew, this is gonna require about 34, 35 corrections, verifications a week
Yes.
to hit 1,700.
One advantage we got, do the recorder process. If we can pull records from the older records and they say the material type is not lead, if it says it's galvanized and the mains are transite, and we just don't have those records updated in our system, we could get 300 or 400 done at one time, depending on the size of the subdivision. So that's what we'll end up doing, but also in the, so that we'll do some of that. But the other thing is if you can plan the work out, running the services, particularly on our side, running the services for 20 feet, you could replace 10 services a day if you really needed to.
You almost have to do 7 a day.
Got to do 7 to 10 a day, yes, sir.
Yeah.
So, one crew could do 4 or 5 a day without any trouble, particularly if you're just setting up and going right down. And if they're short side, it'd be even less than that because you're not having to shoot the missile under the road or anything like that. This is one of those rules that has got good intentions without, I don't know that they fully understand the impact of what is required on the backside
So if
of
we're
this.
doing record search, then we're going to go for the low-hanging fruit first. We're
Yeah.
going to look for the subdivision where we can actually look up.
Biggest subdivisions that are unknown, we hit
That'll
those
be-
first, try to
right.
get that number down as fast as we can.
So that, because that's potential to
But
reduce.
with the letter that we send out, there will be a postcard in that letter that the customer, if they know what material their service is because they have had it replaced because they had a leak or something, they can check that postcard and send it back to us, and that is an acceptable form for identification. If the customer knows they've replaced their service with a plastic line, they check that it's plastic, they send it back to us, and then we could get a handful of, and hopefully a few hundred of them done that way.
That doesn't identify what our line is.
We know with 99% certainty that on our side, there are no lead lines in our system. The bulk of this is the customer side of the line, because we have no records on the customer side of the line on most of this stuff.
If a customer identifies what his line is,
Right.
that's fine. That does not identify what our.
It does not identify what our line is, but if the customer side is plastic, the extreme likelihood is that our side is also plastic, unless it's a galvanized line, and we know where most of the galvanized lines are. The bigger issue is not our side. We know what our side is. We don't know what their side is. And that's why all these are listed as unknown, not because of our materials of construction on our side. So,
So if the customer sends back the postcard, that relieves us from having to do any further.
yes.
I don't know about the reliability of that. You could ask Ms. Roberts how many people have leaks that.
Well, that's one thing we're also going to do. We're going to go back through old leak records.
Oh, okay.
And the old leak
Yeah.
adjustment records, somebody has filled out, replaced service line from meter to house.
Yeah, that's true. Data is king, right?
And they've done that in the last 2 years. 5 years. They have not put in a lead service line in the last 5 years. If they've had a plumber out to their house to replace their service line, that one's not lead. So, again,
Step back a second.
yeah,
You just said that the unknown is actually the customer's line, not our line.
That's correct.
So why would we be replacing our lines having that 1,700?
We got to check both sides. And so while we're there, if you're going to dig down, dig down 5 foot outside the meter on both sides. While you're there, we'll just dig down both sides. Bulk of this will be on the customer side.
The bulk of this is going to be on the customer side.
What about the private systems in Glynn County?
There is a minimum number of customers they have to fill it out, but I have no idea. Honestly, we haven't spoke to them at all about their services when it comes to this.
They're not our obligation.
They're not our obligation.
No, okay.
So I'm still kind of confused here.
Yes, we're responsible for identifying the material type on the customer side of the meter according to the EPA regulation. And every water utility in the United States that serves, I believe, over 1,000 customers has to do it.
Didn't we purchase a piece of equipment that would do that?
No, sir. We approved it, and then we're told, after getting preliminarily told that it would be approved, we're told by EPD they would not approve that for the identification of service lines. And we've also,
You would at least told us though, wouldn't
well, we didn't buy it. We cut the order off. And we also went to them with a sampling plan, and which is allowed by the federal rule, but the states have a certain amount of control over what they will allow, and they would not allow us to do water sampling to eliminate lead service lines either. Which, he was correct. Just because there's not lead in the water doesn't mean it's not a lead service line. That is a valid statement. I'm not disputing that at all. So,
So you got to get all these homeowners' permission to come dig up their yard to see what the pipe is?
unless we can do records, yes, sir.
it? It's just on the meter side, we don't have to go all the way up.
Yes, we do.
I thought you just said it's on their side, not
Both sides of the meter.
It's on this side of the meter,
Yep.
both sides.
Both sides, but the bulk of what is unknown is their side.
But most meters get out of the right of way, according to,
The meter is at the right of way,
yeah.
Right.
so anything past that is on private property. Yes, sir.
And, didn't we pass something to put that meter inside the customer's property years ago? That most of them sit on the lot, not on the right of way?
That's correct, and that's been the major concern, and I'm sure Commissioner Turner said you've been to multiple conferences of what's been talked about. That's the general concern from water utilities. It's not our side of that's concerning. It's this rule makes us liable for private infrastructure that we have no records on, we've done no maintenance on, anything like that. And where does that? I mean, right now it stops at the house, but
Right, which,
what's the next step?
But where I'm circling back to, I don't know when JWSC or Glynn County before them made the determination that the meters are on the lot and not on the right of way. Do we have permission to go out and dig around that meter 5 foot on either side of it without getting easements from every single?
Well, certainly at the meter, because we own the meter. And
You own the meter,
Yes.
but you don't own the land
Right.
on either side.
on the other side, no, we technically do
Either
not.
side of it.
We don't have, we technically certainly don't have, we'd have to get a permission from the customer to go, hopefully it would be a knock on the door, here's a form, we're gonna dig here if you're okay with this. And you're gonna run into resistance for digging holes in people's yard. It's just going to happen.
So most of our meters are outside the right of way.
There's around the right-of-way line, whether they're actually at the right-of-way is not
There was
always.
a requirement, if I recall, it had to be 2 foot inside
Right,
the
yeah.
property line. That
Yeah.
was a.
So so
ruling.
we can dig
Now,
back 5 foot. and-
That goes back 20 years,
Right.
or 50 years. 20 years ago, we know everything is not lead anyway.
Everything's good, right.
and
So,
can
yeah, you
we
look
not-
at this and the general, I mean, it would make sense. You kind of look at this sort of heat map here. Yeah, it's the older stuff in downtown Brunswick, the south end of St. Simons. It's been in the ground for 50 years that we're going to have to go check all these.
I got a question. Can we, when we're at the meter, can we identify the kind of,
You can right there, but that doesn't, they want you to go
doesn't mean
at
it
least
could have
5
been
feet
changed?
past.
Okay.
So ground radar won't work?
Can't tell material type. Can't confirm material type.
They'll different materials.
According to the EPD, you cannot confirm material type that way.
requirements? Do you know what your line is?
That's what we're going to do. On the first letter you're going to get says, okay, there's two forms of letter. One of them will say yours is known, not lead, and you have nothing to do. If it says unknown, there'll be a postcard in there that says, do you know the material of your service line? And it will have a few option checkbox. We're not going to ask you to dig down. If you want to dig down, then by all means dig down on your own side. We're not going to require anybody to go dig down on anything. Check that box. It's a postcard, postage paid, everything. Send it back to us, and we'll input it in the system.
How many responses do you think we'll get back?
I think we'll get a few hundred. I don't think we're going to get 17,000.
Say 1 to 2%.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, a few hundred maybe.
Yeah.
And the purpose, honestly, of doing this in this meeting today is to try to get ahead of some concerns. Just because we send you a note that says you have an unknown line does not mean you have a lead service line. And furthermore, even if you have a lead service line, that does not mean that your water is in any way unsafe to drink. This is just the requirements we're required to follow. And so this will be live on our website, and obviously you can zoom in and get to your house if you want to go to your house, and you'll be able to follow along. Well, this is a good one here. So as you zoom in, this is what I'm saying. The light blue is known, not lead, okay? These check boxes are known, not lead. But every house has 2 points, our side and the customer side.
That's the question mark.
The question mark is the customer side. So this entire neighborhood, we know our side, what it is. We have no idea what is on the customer side. And so as you zoom in, you'll see a lot of this, the overall majority of it, that dark blue is on the customer side, not on our side.
So we'd be looking for records on this group.
We'll be looking for records and things
For
like
sure,
this. On
yeah.
Obviously records from the 50s and 60s are not always still available today. And a lot of times they didn't put material pipes, it was just 8-inch water main. They didn't tell you material pipes and things like that.
What would happen if we would just identify all joint water assets and then tell the EPD, for as far as the customer goes, you're on your own?
I think you would face immediate enforcement action from the EPD and the EPA on that. And as big of a concern as this is for us, we've got 32,000 customers. I mean, there's utilities out there. You think like some of the older cities in the Northeast that's got, millions of services they've got to identify, and those services are not in grass. They're under sidewalks and asphalt and everything. Like it's a nightmare, and they're not 3 foot deep. They're 10 foot deep to get below the frost line. Like it's a challenge.
It's safe to assume that they made these rules, but they didn't provide any financial support for.
There are finance, to the state's credit, they have provided SRF funding if you would like to get a loan to go do this. A loan to go do this, yes.
There are some GFA loan grant funds too, I think.
Oh yeah, if you take the loan money from GFA, which you can do, you're required to use that money both for your side and their side. You can't if you take GFA money to do this, you can't pass any of that cost on to the customer. So your money goes probably a quarter as far, because most of our side is going to be 20, 30 feet of line. The customer side may be 50, 60, 80 feet of line, depending on where their house sits in their lot. But so this is a great example. This is, what is this, Magnolia Park? Yeah. So this is Magnolia Park. Did a project in there. We know what every line in there on our side is. We tied to a meter. We replaced the meter. There's a brand new meter. We have no idea what is past that meter. And so when you zoom in on a lot of these neighborhoods, there'll be, on every one of the neighborhoods, there are 2 boxes. And most of the time, there's a dark blue, and if you click on this box, that's the customer side. See, system-owned material, non-lead. Customer-owned material, lead status unknown.
New service lines on every house in Magnolia Park.
We put new mains and new services to the meter on every house in Magnolia Park. Yes, sir.
And when were those properties built? What
Those were 60s, 50s, 60s, some of them in the 70s maybe in there. So like College Park here, obviously we'll do some records because a lot of this is listed as unknown for on our side too. But we can find everything on our side, and it doesn't eliminate the 1,700, because that 1,700 that we have to do is both sides. So that's why we're looking for records on these things. But, I mean, you look at some of these neighborhoods, if you can just run through one of these neighborhoods, you know, we can do statistical sampling. There's, 100 lots in the neighborhood. You can do, and I'm just making up numbers, 20 of them and say we're going to check 20 lots randomly. And if all 20 of those lots are not lead, the overwhelming likelihood is none of the other ones are lead either. So,
Does the EPD accept that, or?
yes, statistical sampling is an approved method. Yes.
All right, so out of that 1,700, you may only have to do 100.
We'll do more. It depends on the neighborhood, obviously. Size of the neighborhood. The bigger the neighborhood, you'll have to do a few more. But, these neighborhoods have got 15 houses in it. You may only have to check 3 or 4. But if there was 60 houses in it, you may only have to check 10, just because everything would have been built around the same time. So if you see us out there in your neighborhood digging things up, this is what we're doing. It is going to be a project that is with us probably for 10 years, ongoing, just because if you got to replace 10% a year, it's going to be with you for 10 years.
Commission, what we're doing to protect people right now from lead, if they have that.
Yeah, we had 2 types of chemicals to our water. We had chlorine for disinfection, and we had phosphate for corrosion protection. And so lead tends to leach out when you got your pH out of whack on your water. And so, and not adding phosphate can have a big deal. Correct me if I'm wrong, Commissioner, the Flint situation was them not adding the orthophosphates they were required to add into the water because it was too expensive. And phosphate is expensive. I'm not disputing that at all. It is highly expensive to add phosphate to the water. We spend $150,000, $200,000 a year adding phosphate to the water. But we've been doing that for decades. And so that's not a concern on our side. We put out a consumer confidence report every year that has lead and copper results on that. And every year it shows that we do not have any levels of concern for lead or copper or anything like that in our system. But I wanted to, make y'all aware of this. This was going live. Try to get the information out there and understand that every one of our customers is fixing to get a letter, so y'all might start getting a whole lot of phone calls about this. And there will be nobody sent a letter that says they have a lead service line because, again, we have not found any lead service lines in Glynn County at this time.
Did we generate this
Yes.
program?
Well, no, we subscribe. Well, this program is the EPD selected them as a provider, and so we're utilizing this, but we input all the data and
I
everything.
was going to say, we're responsible for the input.
We're responsible for the input of the data.
What's the likelihood over time that there'll be enough pushback for not being able to comply with this? The EPA would.
I will say, since this rule got proposed about 5 years ago, it's went through about 8 different iterations thus far, and I think it's going to continue to go through iterations because I believe the number I heard was something 60 or 80 billion dollars worth of investment would be required to do this nationwide. That's
Are we putting the EPA's phone number on the letters that we're sending out?
there is required language we have to put on there, and it will require our phone number to be on there. Yes, sir. It is certainly a challenge, but one that we fully intend to meet. But see, this is one of those. We pulled tax records when the house was built. You look at some of these, and everything else in the neighborhood was built 1990, but one of them was built in 1989. We got to go check the one that was built in 1989, not the one that was built in 1990.
None of this includes inside the house.
Now, right now, none of it includes inside the house, and I'll be honest, that's something that a lot of water utilities are very concerned about, is if they make you go inside the house. Because once you start going inside the house, you have opened up Pandora's box and liability at that point. Exactly. If we were to find a lead service and it's replaced, and we replace it from the meter to the house, there's a high likelihood the pipes in the wall are lead. There's a high likelihood they got leaded fixtures in the house. Because that's just the materials of construction at the time. We do have a few copper services. We do know where there are copper services at. Downtown Brunswick down here, we know there's copper services, but we haven't found any lead ones. We don't have to replace the copper ones. They because of what happened in Flint and some of the data that came out of that, understandably, EPA decided that they wanted to eliminate lead service lines in this country. They may not have understood the full ramifications of the time frame they gave everybody to do it. But if you do get a letter, we'll have people. My request is that everybody be patient. This is going to be a process to go through. And we are going to start, and this makes sense, the letters that sent out that say it's unknown, the ones we're going to check first are the biggest neighborhoods because that gets the biggest bang for the buck. So if you live in a smaller neighborhood, you may get that letter for the next 6 years before we go out and check your service. That's just the unfortunate reality of the situation. But the water is safe to drink.
Any other questions? Thank you, Andrew.
So it looks a lot better when you zoom in. It's just that they give you the one, if it's dark, it kind of takes over. But when you zoom in, it's not quite as many dark ones as it might look like on the front end. Yeah, we're going to spend a lot of time in downtown Brunswick in the next.
How much time you think we've spent on it so far?
We've had one staff member that's done a lot of work on it. Lucas Dominguez, he's our asset management manager. He's done a lot of work on this. Our distribution crews have spent some time on it, but it's been a just blunt assessment. Every time we've tried to focus on it, we get called off to chase a boring rig that has went through a water main. So that has seemed to have improved a little bit, which we're glad to see, but we just have not been able to spend focused effort on this like we would have wanted to. But we will get through it over the next several years.
Good presentation.
Oh, no, I had text.
Next item is water production report, Mr. Burris.
All right, our water production report, and we'll show you when we get to the sewer report. It was awful wet again the month of September.
Yes, it was.
So as a result, water production numbers were down a little bit. Did mention at the last meeting the Howard Coffin well is still down. Todd, we got to get together and get a scope of work together and bid that well rehab job out. But the Brunswick system, 4.8 million gallons a day for the system. Mostly balanced pretty well. You'll see an increased water flow at Goodyear Park as a result of Howard Coffin being down. But overall, that's pretty well. It flows a little bit lower than what we saw last year this time. Hopefully that is because we've eliminated through the leak notification or continuous usage notification, we may have eliminated some long-standing leaks that were using a lot of water. We still send out a few hundred of those every month, but we're seeing some good results on that. But you can kind of see when it was dry in June and early July, water usage got up a little bit. Now we're back down towards the winter averages as wet as it has been. On St. Simons, all 4 wells up and running for the month. Mallory got a little bit of a late start on the month, had some electrical issues there, but 2.5 million gallons a day of water on St. Simons for the month. Obviously, these water usage numbers do also reflect water usage during Hurricane Helene. Our water systems were up during Hurricane Helene, but water usage was, of course, down because of lack of power and some people leaving and getting out of town and things like that. That was just for 5 days or so, but that can have an impact. You can kind of see again, June when it was really dry, likely outdoor water usage on St. Simons. Now it's coming back down. We do see a lot of that, and that trend tends to follow the rainfall events. And then at exit 29, Wells system's really balanced down there. About 360,000 gallons a day coming out of the exit 29 system between those 2 wells down there. So water systems continue to be very effective. We've got some ongoing work we're doing to rehab some generators on those well sites, but thankfully we were able to maintain the water systems during the storm, and everybody had water despite the fact that power was out throughout 95% of Glynn County, something in that neighborhood. So good job by our water crews. Unaccounted for water, about 14% for the month, and a bulk of that being higher was not getting reads from the Academy Creek meter at the actual treatment plant because of the amount of water that goes through there every single day. Does increase that unaccounted for water, but that meter is now reading again. So the month of October, we should see that number dive back down a little bit with that reading back online. But you can see, kind of follow along water bills. We are seeing pretty consistent growth, about 170 to 100 accounts a month being added right now between new construction and vacant properties coming online. So still a lot of people wanting to move to Glynn County, and so glad to have them on our systems. Any questions on the water report?
Okay, go on to wastewater.
Wastewater reports, Academy Creek for the month, 12.4 million gallons a day, which is down a little bit from August. The first 2 weeks of September were extraordinarily wet, and the numbers did drop back into closer to normal territory by the end of the month. But we had some heavy rainfall the early part of the month, and still, with the amount of rain we got in August and September, it just takes a long time for those flows to go back down. And you can see right here on these numbers on the influent concentrations, it does have an impact on the strength of the material coming in. BOD at 72 parts coming in, normal domestic wastewater is about 200 to 250 parts per million. So you can kind of get a gauge of how much rainwater is included in those totals to drop it down that far. About 100 parts per million on the TSS. Did get our intercocci under control. Glad to see the plant take that under control there. Ammonia still having some issues there. We're getting some more RAS pumps online. Hopefully that continues to decrease. We will begin November 1st. We will begin cleaning out the grit in Aeration Basin 3 like we did in Aeration Basin 2 earlier this year. The one advantage we have for Aeration Basin 3 is it doesn't have 40 years of grit in it because the basin hasn't been there for 40 years. So it should be less grit. But it has never been cleaned out like Aeration Basin 2 had never been cleaned out. So we'll get that process started November 1st. For the month, 12 inches of rain, following 14 inches of rain in the month of August. So our excessive rainfall certainly looks like October may be a little bit drier for us, which is a welcome sight for our sewer crews. But if you look on our graph on the next page, you can obviously see the rainfall-induced I&I being a major concern that we're going to have to focus on coming up in these next couple of years, try to get these numbers knocked back down where they need to be. Dunbar Creek for the month, 4.4 million gallons a day leaving the facility. That is a violation, as 4.0 is our permit limit. Those numbers we're back under 4 the last couple of weeks of the month and have been under 4 so far this month, but that is heavily rainfall driven. As you can see, the few months before that were 2.9, 3.2. So obviously we did not add 1 million gallons a day worth of actual sewer flows to our facilities. But the plant, to its credit, is doing very well, even though the high flows have been there. The improvements we've made at Dunbar Creek have really helped out. Again, we only report to 1 decimal point because that's all we're required to report. It was not a 0 ammonia leaving the plant. It was 0.04, but it does round to 0 ammonia leaving the plant. So that's always a nice number to see on anything leaving the facility. 97% BOD and 98.5% TSS. That's really good considering these numbers coming in are not high to start with. If that was, up in the 150 to 200 range, you'd be looking at 99% removal on BOD and TSS for the month. Rain gauge on the island, so there was about 7 inches of rain. Rain gauges are as good as they are. It's point location. You're not getting the full spectrum on that. But obviously still another very wet month, particularly those first couple of weeks of the month on St. Simon's. Then at exit 29, about 500,000 gallons a day going through exit 29. That system being newer is a little less, has significantly less I&I compared to the other 2 systems. Do get a little bit in there, but not near as bad as the other one. So you see the concentrations higher than the other 2 plants on the influent concentrations coming in. But 98% removal on BOD and 95% for TSS. Plant ticking along very, very well down there at exit 29. About 7.5 inches of rain recorded at exit 29 for the month as well. You can kind of see it. Exit 29 flows stay fairly consistent month to month compared to if you look at the graphs on the other ones. But thankfully, we did not receive much rain with Helene. That would have made that situation drastically worse for us if we had got a substantial amount of rainfall during that event with the amount of power outages that we had. But any questions on the wastewater flow report?
The replacing on the north end or south end of Brunswick, is that where most of the water is coming from?
We know we have extremely high run times at Pump Station 4002, which is the one that serves the bulk of the south of Gloucester district in Brunswick. We do have the 5 miles of pipe that are currently under rehab. They're doing, when the project report comes up, we'll go through it in a little more detail. They're doing some pre-inspection stuff there now. We know that is a major contributor. We also have significant I&I issues out around the hospital and out in the Riverside district across 17. We have significant I&I over there in the mainland district, and then on the island, it does appear that a large amount of that I&I is getting into the gravity basin immediately surrounding Dunbar Creek. Because we do have some elevated run times at pump stations, but nothing that would indicate the volumes of flow that we should be getting. So we've got some south end of St. Simon's work to do in the 2002, 2003 basins. Those are large basins on the south end, but it looks like the bulk of that is getting in that gravity basin immediately adjacent to the plant, which makes a certain amount of sense given how low it is back there in Glen Haven in those areas. And if we get a lot of tidal issues in those situations, we could get a significant amount of water through that plant. But we are, like I said, we've got 4002 going now, and then I got the information sent to me. I haven't had a chance to review it yet. Sent to me end of last week on the 4017 basin, which is the one that serves the hospital area. And so in the next year or so, you'll probably see several more CIPP projects coming out to try to address this information.
And the flooding of the streets in Brunswick?
During this storm, no, sir. There was very limited flooding because we had very little water. We had some trees down across roadways that were blocked for short periods of time, but no flooding during that period. During the first one, yes, sir. A lot of water on the ground during that 8 inches of rain we got. This one was wind. The first one was water, and so we had a lot of flooding in the downtown areas. You know, it's the typical things you're used to seeing.
A lot of that could come from the flooding.
A lot of it very well could. I honestly thought before the last couple of months that we were having more groundwater issues than rainwater issues, but I was wrong. We have significant rainwater-driven I&I that we got to get a hold of. Some of that likely is due to bore-throughs that we have not found yet, but it'll be a process going through it. But the one advantage with doing the trenchless rehab is that's a lot better than having to dig up all the streets and everything like that, from both a cost and timing perspective to get that done. So we'll try to address as much as we can trenchlessly, and then if we have to dig and replace some assets, we will. We've got to get back on our manhole rehab projects as well. Those, you know, the running thing we say is, you know, there's not a silver bullet out there that you're going to find 1,000 gallons a minute getting into the system most of the time. It's, you know, it's death by 1,000 paper cuts out there. You know, it doesn't sound like a lot. There's one line in downtown Brunswick. I know I've told the chairman this. I reviewed the video. It's got 10-foot joints, and so every joint in the pipe, you can see there's 45 joints in a 470-something foot section of pipe, and all 45 joints were leaking. None of them were leaking bad, but when you multiply it by 45, it gets to be a lot of water by the end of the day. So you look at it, it's not causing sinkholes or anything like that, so you may not notice it on top of the ground. It may just be a few drops as you're going past it, but if you multiply that out across miles of pipe, it ends up being a substantial amount of water.
Photos.
All right, Todd, you talk for a while.
Right, Commissioners, here's our construction underway photos. And we'll walk through this pretty quickly here. Pump station 4105, 4107 basin improvements. That's primarily a force main extension or improvement project. Going very well. I think they've using the last couple segments of poly pipe right there at Old Jessup and Kate Road for the carrier pipe that's going to go underneath the railroad tracks, and then we're just waiting on the final permitting. We had a permit with the railroad companies, 2 of them, RailPro, which is their preferred contractor for us to use to do the flagging and whatnot once we start doing the drills underneath the railroad tracks. So going very well. TB Landmark is our contractor for that project. Next project is ARCO area water sewer extensions. We're hoping that project's going to wrap up in November with final paving and whatnot. Last bits of the gravity are some pictures here of it going in. And this is a good example of one of the alleyways or unopened alleyways that we're utilizing to stay out of the roads. We did relocate some of the originally designed gravity segments in the roadways at the contractor's advisement and good ideas within these unopened alleys right here. So
I believe the report last Friday was there's about 750 feet of pipe left to install.
that was it. Yeah.
And it's just testing and, site restoration, paving, things like that. That's got to be done.
That's it. closing in hopefully very soon on that. Galvanized replacements, in-house project, just a couple shots here of segments of pipe that have come out of the system there. Miss Annette Corneli, and she's in planning construction. Also, Mr. Willie Walker, he's in planning construction as well. Showcasing a couple of those pieces right there. Canal Road Water Production Facility. If you haven't been out in that area, encourage you to go take a look. You'll see the big inside, I guess it's the inner wall of the tank that's standing out there now. They'll be winding that with pre-stressed wire, then shooting the outer concrete wall on that. Looking pretty good. A lot of site piping all the way underneath the building of the service pumps as well going in now. That's the inside of a ground storage tank if you've never seen one, before they've shotcreted it. Some of the fixtures and whatnot that they fix on there, the overflow shroud. Two nice heavy-duty peerless pumps sitting on skids there. Those will go into service, 1500 GPM high service pumps. That's what pumps the water from the ground storage tank to the system.
Capacity of that tank that's being built.
That one's a 250, I believe.
It's either 250 or 300.
300, yeah, 250 to 300. It's what we could fit on the site.
150, it says I see, right?
Yes, sir. It's what we could fit on the site comfortably. We did have a little bit of, we did obtain, or are in the process of obtaining, the adjacent parcel from Glynn County. That's it. That is in the works. But to meet setbacks and requirements for things like that, that's about as big as we can go. Then also we're limited on the height of the tank as well because of the closeness to the airport approach. Reeves Young, our contractor on there. Pump station rehab. This is the group of 4001, 4002, and 3101 down on the south end. And this is the picture of 4002, downtown Brunswick, right off of Mansfield Street, adjacent to Mansfield Street. And right now we're currently waiting on part of the agreement to control costs on this project is Joint Water is doing the bypassing, providing bypassing for the station. And that station has to go under bypass once our contractor goes in and starts replacing the electrical components, motor control units, et cetera, inside there. So all the electrical components are on site now, safely housed inside. And you can see they've done the interior of the pump station looks really nice. It's in good shape. That's been all repainted and rehabbed. Motor control electrical room is going to be air conditioned now to take care of those good VFDs, and just waiting on our ops folks to be able to get out there and get the bypass hooked up, and Popco can then proceed with the electrical replacements.
How much land do we own around that pump station?
We don't. Ooh, the fenced-in area.
Yes, sir. So yeah, it's not a whole lot. We were gonna approach the city about obtaining a little bit more of a footprint, but right now it's just what you see literally within the fence there. It's not a lot of room.
Actually, I'm not sure that one's been actually deeded over yet, so we may not actually own that property.
City's
Details.
property right now.
Yeah, details. When we go to that, maybe we'll ask for a little bit more. You can see the bypass that's sitting out there right now. That's
That has a permanent bypass, and the green one is a rented bypass as a backup. Which obviously is not piped in yet. So,
So we have a permanent bypass pump at that station?
yes, sir. Although I will say, during the hurricane, that is one of only 4 stations that I know that didn't go lose power. So we had a permanent bypass there, but it never had to run because that was one of the mythical 4 that didn't lose power. So
taking the umbrella to work. It didn't
Right.
rain. Yeah. Okay, we do have a rehab project, another rehab project, Pump Station 4044. That's out in front of Walmart and Publix area right there. That is a, aerial shot, I guess, looking down on the site right here, and you can see, looks a lot different than it used to look under construction. Orange fence limits of construction pretty much right here, and existing pump stations over here. They'll expand this as they go to do the gravity, but existing control panel. Yeah, here, that's existing station. So that's gonna become a wet well. New manhole is, or new wet well is going in right here. That's where you see the shore. Fairly deep hole, pretty impressive. They went to great efforts on the trench and shoring, safety and reinforcement there. It's paid off. So now they've got barrel sections up. I think they lack 2 barrel sections and then the top slab of the wet well. They'll be done with the wet well. Then they'll start moving back towards the existing pump station with the gravity. And then also key component of this one is we're going to have to do a force main from here out to the manhole out in the street. So, a little 50-foot or so jog. And this is a shot of our mall elevated storage tank, but it's to show you that our contractor is utilizing that area as a laydown yard for at least 2 of the projects, 3 of the projects actually, that they're working for us on. And so it includes the structures and materials for 4044, what we just looked at. Also for the group of 3 pump stations, the 4002, 1, and 3101 pump stations, and then also the Highway 17 pump station that we're putting in. That's structures for it sitting there ready to go.
The elevated storage tank, is that, did we close out that project, or is it still some?
Final invoice is being paid this week.
Okay, yeah, I know there's some problem with some of the valves in there, right?
We got those worked out.
Yeah, okay.
Good shots of 44 right here with the, this is the private station that's going away, decommissioned. That's going to be a straight gravity flow into the new pump station. They're eliminating that. That's one of the site meetings there with our contractor, engineer, and joint water staff. Dunbar Creek.
Yeah, like I said, project has went very well at Dunbar Creek. We've got a couple of more items we have to address. We are looking at some roadway improvements that we talked about last month. They're getting us finalized quotes on. I do not believe there will be any changes, price changes associated with potentially rerouting some of the paving in there just a bit. We're also going to be installing a alum and liquid lime feed system for phosphorus removal, and there will be a change associated with that, but that'll be coming to you in the next couple of months. We did have on that bottom left picture there, you can see there was a large tree that lost its roots and fell over the back entrance during the hurricane. So we did have that removed the day after Hurricane Helene came through. Internal crews took advantage of that. Our facilities maintenance crews and a couple of our water distribution crew members took care of that one for us so they could access the back entrance to the plant. And that plant was on, I believe it was on generator for about 3 days following the storm before they were able to restore power to that area, but everything went very smoothly. The new clarifier is online. It was taken offline briefly because it was leaking into the weir troughs before it went over the weirs. We got that taken care of and it's back online now. All of the other change order items we've done for the air piping and the roofing and things like that have been completed.
I have a question. Is there a priority system for Georgia Power on restoring power in terms of need for?
They have our list of priority assets, yes, sir. I think in this scenario, it was what they could get back up as fast as they could because of having to rebuild the transmission lines. So it was more of what was available at the time. But having to rebuild all those transmission lines, some of the things that came up that weren't fed from those main transmission lines were able to get pulled up quicker than some of the other things were. I know we talked to a lot of out-of-town guests that were helping with the power restoration over that 5 or 6 day period.
Yeah, great response. Next project is Highway 17 North Pump Station, and that's a shot of that there. Only sustained a little bit of minor wind damage there during the hurricane there, our existing pump station structure. And the contractor's already putting dibs in on that to reutilize that as a chicken coop after the project. So.
They helped us with the demo process.
Yeah. So it is under bypass, and that group of customers is being taken care of. Again, there's the structures back there at the mall tank site, sitting there ready to go. Academy Creek.
Combined project to do some RAS replacements, which are sludge pumps, and the UV installation. You can see they've been focusing on demoing in the chlorine contact chamber. There on that bottom photo, you get a good shot of what it used to look like what's on the left, and they've demoed most of those interior walls out.
Todd, can you zoom in on the top one and let's put an arrow where the discharge is and where the work's being done?
Yes, sir.
Stand a little better.
Yes, sir. Right here.
Yes, the work's being done right there on the east, west side of that. And so the flow goes out of there and goes out to the creek right there. So everything's going through the east side of the channel right now. That's not causing us any problems. The demo crews have been in there, and that's going pretty smoothly. They're also going to be working in the two RAS buildings in between the clarifiers on that set of 4 clarifiers. Back. The white building in between the 2 clarifiers, Todd.
Oh,
Up. Right. That one.
sorry.
And that other one.
Little-
The one that looks just like it. That one and that one. So they're replacing RAS pumps in there.
Pointed there, basically.
So project moving pretty well, obviously, with the storms. They demobilized, had to remobilize. Haven't got a lot of work done the last couple of weeks, but they're back on site now getting work done in there. Those tanks, you always know they're big, and then they demo all the interior walls, and you figure out how deep those things really are. So it's a good eye-opening experience for the operators to see it look with it empty like that.
See the
So,
person standing in there.
yeah, human for scale. Kind of show you what you're looking at there.
And not those fillet, or those,
Explain
They're
to
gonna
us-
take a look.
Explain to us what type of equipment's going in here compared to what we did have.
Currently, we use gaseous chlorine to disinfect, so we inject gaseous chlorine into the front end of the contact chamber, and it waves its way through all of those channels to increase the contact time, and then we dose for dechlorination, sodium thiosulfate for dechlorination on the back end. We're putting in UV disinfection, which is a bank of UV light bulbs that is fully submerged at all times, and it penetrates and sterilizes the bacteria, and we don't have to worry about dosing chlorine. And the one advantage, you don't have to dechlorinate either. It's just goes out as is. So that was bought. The UV equipment was bought with an ARPA grant awarded by the state of Georgia. And so the installation we're having to pay for out of our own pocket because the grant didn't cover all of that. But this will be a good project once we get done. We're going to leave the existing side will be remaining in case there's ever a problem with the UV system. We could chlorinate in the short term until we could get that back online. So, but that's
We're putting in another outfall line,
we're
correct?
putting in a parallel outfall line, yes, sir. Parallel outfall line because at high tide and a 100-year flood event and max flow, hasn't been realized yet, but calculations say that we'll have hydraulic problems at 100-year flood and max flow going through the facility. It would back up water to the point that it would cause problems for the UV system. With a parallel line that reduces the head, and you don't have that problem.
We have the equipment on site already.
The equipment is on site and sitting in the boxes, ready for the erector set to be erected.
Talk about the return sludge pumps as it relates to the ammonia problem we have.
Right, so the reason we're having ammonia problems is because we have sludge that sits in the bottom of clarifiers, and we can't get the sludge out fast enough. And you can do 2 things with sludge. You can waste it, which means you put it in the digesters, or you can recycle it or return it and send it back through the system. We do not have the ability to recycle enough sludge to keep that sludge level down where we need to. And if you waste it all, you don't have enough bacteria to actually do what you need to do biologically at the plant. So what we're doing is we're going to increase about 4-fold the capacity to recycle sludge through that plant. And they'll also have chopper capabilities, and so any rags or anything in there that are currently clogging up pumps, they'll get chopped up and sent back through the system, and they won't worry about having to declog pumps. So that will help reduce the amount of solids that sit in the clarifiers. The last thing you want in any wastewater plant is something not moving. Solids not moving is always a bad thing. And so we're going to make sure they never stop moving. Those pumps are supposed to be delivered sometime before the end of November, currently as scheduled.
We're buying those direct.
No, sir. They're part of the contract. See some large fittings there on the bottom. So the largest fittings we ever buy are for Academy Creek. Most of the time out in the system, I think the largest gravity line in the system is a 40, is it 48 or 42, Todd?
48, I think.
48. We've got some 52-inch pipe and stuff like that in the wastewater plant. That's a 48-inch fitting T right there you've got that's going in from the clarifiers to the filter structure. So if you like to see some large fittings that you don't normally get to see, we have them at Academy Creek right now. We had some great pictures of Todd inside one of the pipes when the original Academy Creek project was going on.
That was cool to see.
The 52-inch pipe that was going in.
Couldn't resist, huh?
No, I couldn't resist. Okay, Brunswick Villas, water and sewer extensions, that's down on Townsend Street, just west of Altama, across from the college. And if you drive down that way, you'll see the road closed and a bunch of equipment out there moving around, but that's where they're at. Installing gravity sewer, already got that well underway. We've already discovered some archaeological stuff out there. I say that jokingly. Old, let me clarify, old manhole that was out there in an old force main connection, and pretty brick manhole that they uncovered.
Is this lady supervising here? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
She's very interested and very
Looks
eager.
like she's really into it.
Yeah, and as I understand it, very eager to connect as well. So I think a lot of the residents out there are very excited to see some a good project going on in their neighborhood. Going very well. They're coordinating a little bit with the adjacent ARCO folks on staging materials and whatnot. So got two contractors working very well together, side by side. Okay, and also speaking of the I&I on the south and down here, the 4002 CIPP is in progress.
Yeah, well, they're going through, before we do CIPP, we've already inspected all lines, but the contractor comes back through and re-cleans and inspects lines before they line them. And so Jason went out and rode with them for a bit and got the pictures there of them inspecting a line. That's obviously got some root intrusion issues. And as you can imagine, if there's a root that will get through there, then water will trail along that route, and that'll be additional I&I points that are coming in the system. They'll come through, cut those roots out, and then just line right over it, and you'll be good to go. No need to dig or anything like that. So that pipe will be real straightforward to line once they get the roots cut out of the way. So we're going through pre-cleaning and televising that. They're having some issues getting hotel rooms the last couple of weeks because of the rush of hotels that have been taken up, but they'll be back in town next week, hopefully, to get back on doing that work. There are to be a couple of challenging lines to do. We've got a couple out here in Gloucester Street that basically follow the center of the road. That will require some traffic disruptions during that period. We're going to try to stage it where it minimizes it. And then there's a couple lines in between the Pate building and the old courthouse that have to be done, and we'll try to hit those on Saturday to avoid disrupting activities at the courthouse.
Very good. So that's into the pictures, and we're down to the details of the report. And glad to.
Getting very near bidding documents for the Exit 29 well and elevated storage tank, and very near bidding the community road project.
And community road. Yeah.
The community road is sewer.
Low pressure sewer, or not low pressure sewer for that area.
So,
And then we've provided final comments back for the installation of the 8 fixed generators as well to our electrical engineer, and he's addressing those comments and finalizing the bid documents for that as well. So a lot of work going on out in the community, but got some more coming up, and then we're still waiting on mobilization on the Exit 42 elevated storage tank as well.
going through some middle review on that, electrical and painting that we just received this week. And, yep, we're looking forward to seeing them mobilized. Thank you.
Is there any update on the North Mainland plant? Right.
Still trying to, well, as far as the actual plant site, they're finalizing the comprehensive agreement documents. We were hoping to have that for the month of October, but weren't able to get that done. So hopefully for the month of November, we'll have the final comprehensive agreement on that one. And then we're still trying to finalize, or I say finalize, we're still trying to nail down arrangements for the discharge line to the other side. We're having some technical difficulties getting appointments scheduled to get that accomplished.
Andrew, could you kind of give us an update about, I know Helene was a difficult situation, and, you know, planning for natural disasters is difficult. You can ask the people in Asheville, as their water pipe encased in concrete washed away, their main line. So, I mean, have we learned some things or identified areas that we need to address
We've
in the future?
A, identified areas, and B, we've already actually started taking some steps to attack those areas. Obviously, with Helene, with the amount of widespread power outages, now our water facilities have permanent backup generators. of course, you can test all the generators you want. When an event happens, there's always one or two that do not run that ran 2 weeks before. So we've got some generator issues we need to address at the well facilities, and we're going through those. On the wastewater side, obviously, when you got 150 plus pump stations that don't have power in them, and thank goodness it did not rain more than it did, or it would have been a much worse scenario for us. We ran around hooking up generators for 5 days following the event. We had very good support from a vendor that we have been utilizing. I called him and said, bring me every generator you've got and every bypass pump you got, and we'll figure it out once they get here. And he rolled about 40 assets in 24 hours to us. But what we found is that we were limited on the amount of staff that felt comfortable hooking up generators. They had done it before, but in a stressful situation, they were cautious. So there were really about 3 staff members that were doing the bulk of that. We had crews our water distribution crews were very helpful, and our wastewater plant crews, because we lost power at the wastewater plants, but we had generators there. They didn't have a lot of issues, so they pulled generators to a lot of different places and met people there to land generators. But last week, actually in advance of, what was the last storm? Milton. We actually held David Grantham, who is our SCADA technician, does a lot of our electrical work. He actually held focused training for 30 staff members and allowed them to actually hook up generator on a blue sky day. It was down there at exit 29. We had staged all the rental equipment at exit 29 because that's the biggest grassy area we got. And so there was quite a nice photo. I'm surprised we didn't get that in there. There was quite a nice photo of all of the assets we had rented out there for them to come pick it up. And so we actually took one of our generators that we have, backup generators that we have, and landed it at pump station 3101 right there across from Satilla Marsh Elementary School, and let crews physically hook up generators with him standing there watching them and teaching them how to do that. So we now feel like we've got it. Now, all 30 of them don't feel comfortable hooking up a generator today. I mean, it's a process, but I feel like we've got another 4 or 5 staff members, maybe 10 staff members that feel comfortable hooking up generators, particularly in smaller situations now. We did run through the challenges. I'm sure if you were here, you understand that on Friday, we lost cell phones, internet, everything under the sun, which creates a bit of a challenge when you're trying to coordinate where everybody's going across Glynn County. We do have some satellite radios, which were effective in that moment, but we only have 10 of them. And so we've got to maybe be a little more formalized in how we go about dispatching crews during that event so we know where everybody's at. So we have initiated having people in our office that are responsible for you check in and out with that individual every time you go somewhere. So we're doing some of that. And then we've had some recurring issues with power outages at certain locations. For whatever reason, they just seem to lose power quicker than other locations are. So we've got some new locations that we want to prioritize pre-staging assets at in these events as well. But thankfully, our crews worked diligently, many hours, but they did a very good job. We were able to respond quickly, not as quickly as we would have liked in some situations. We did have a few what are known as dry land releases. That's where sewer may have came out of a manhole, but we were able to get there, clean it up, and get it on generator. But the crews did very well during the event, all things considered. And we had some good community partners that helped us out with the feeding of our crews and things like that. So it's unfortunate that we have to go through these events, but the community does really come together well during these events. And so a lot of support from Glynn County Public Works, getting trees out of the way so we could get to things and items like that. So I will say I hope we don't have any more storms. I am tired. So
Thank you. I appreciate the update on that. I know it was trying time. So.
We had some employees that would love to have come to work, but they had to cut themselves out of their driveways to get to work. So, there's, I was telling somebody the other day, it feels like 5 years ago we had 3 or 4 days notice on these things, and now it's 2 days out and they still don't know where these things are going. So that makes it a little more challenging when you just don't know. And sometimes it changes in a 4-hour period very rapidly on you. So.
You can ask the people in Waycross
Yes,
about that.
absolutely.
They can confirm it for you.
Yeah, we were very fortunate. As frustrating as it was at times, if you drive an hour west of here, it was substantially worse an hour west of here. So we got very fortunate in that regard. We do probably need to get a few more pintle hitches on trucks. We got too many trucks that got ball hitches, and generators almost all have pintle hitches on them. So we had to change the receivers out on some of our trucks. We may be coming to you in the budget next year about purchasing some smaller portable generators, because we rented some smaller generators, some 20 kW and some 50 kW generators, and those were very helpful because they're a lot more portable than some of these bigger generators are, and pretty easy to connect up really quickly versus trying to pull a very heavy piece of equipment and get it put in a location. They can be pulled with a standard F-150 pickup truck versus having to have a 450 to pull these vehicles. So those were very helpful. So thankfully we've got some good vendors that were able to help us out, and then they asked us Friday if they could start picking that stuff up because they needed to move them south. So all of those assets have now been relocated somewhere in Florida to deal with the issues they're dealing with following Hurricane Milton. We had one outage that occurred due to we had a generator that didn't run on the Fancy Bluff well, so the only other well we had was the Old Brookman well. The Old Brookman well had an issue. We lost pressure at the south end of the system for a short period of time. We got it back up, but we did put out a boil water advisory for exit 29 because we did lose pressure on that system. That was an issue where it came back up off of generator onto utility power, and when it transferred over, certain things didn't come back up like it was supposed to. So we now have a checklist for when it comes back up on utility power, making sure those things are taken care of when it comes back on. So
Thank you, I appreciate it.
yes, sir. So we did. Was not a perfect response. We're always learning.
How much overtime do we have?
I can have that number for you tomorrow. I know we had about 45 people here working 12 to 16 hour days for 5 days. So it was a substantial amount of overtime. But thankfully we did not have the 10 at the chicken coop, as we were saying. It was about the worst damage we had to any of our assets. Did lose a tonneau cover off the back of a truck, but minor inconvenience. We'll deal with that. So,
Chicken coop, I got it.
yeah, that was the worst of our damages. The tree across the backside of Dunbar was a bit of an eye-opener at 2 in the morning when we were trying to get into the back of Dunbar, but I gracefully made my way to the ground across that tree. Yeah. Thought my leg was about 6 inches longer than it was that night. Didn't quite make it to the ground.